Good morning. How are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka Split Soup. Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to run through an SPR example and show you how to calculate the EV of shoving. And in this situation, we're going to look at a spot where we have an ace-high flush draw, but that's all in a smaller SPR pot, a 1.7 SPR pot to be exact. And the more that you play things like tournaments and you find yourself in these smaller SPR pots, or you find yourself in explosive cash games where there's more 3 and 4 bet pots, or you're playing against more shallow stacked opponents in cash games, these smaller SPR pots can happen and you have to know how to handle yourself in them. And one of the best ways to do that is to do this kind of off-table practice, running through some of the basic math and starting to build that intuition so in real time you can say, yep, this is a great spot to commit, or maybe not this time. So without further ado, let's jump into it and go through an entire example together. Alright, so let's start by reading the prompt up at the top. So playing a 5-10 cash game, you open raise to 30, they 3-bet to 100 total, you 4-bet to 225 total, and they call. So here we are, we have $800 left on this board of King 10, 7. We have ace 3 of clubs, so we have that nut flush draw, but in a pot of 465 with only 800 back, we only have a 1.7 SPR pot. So on the flop, you decide to go all in for your remaining 800. You suspect they called your 4-bet with this range of hands over here and will only call this all in when they have top pair better, 10x, a flush draw, or an open-ended straight draw. Don't worry if you disagree with that assumption. It's just the assumption we're going to use in this example. But if you wanted to, you could solve it this way and then also say, okay, well, what if they didn't call with the flush draws? What if they didn't call with the open-ended straight draws? What if they didn't call with 10x? How does that change things? And obviously they're probably going to be folding more often and they're going to be continuing with a stronger range of hands, which impacts your equity when called. So keep those kind of things in mind. But for now, we're just going to answer it with these variables. And then the question is, what is your equity against their calling range? So that's what we're going to start with. And then we're going to do the advanced EV equation down below. All right, so let's start by getting everything into Flopzilla Pro. So we're throwing our whole cards first over here. Our dead cards are ace of clubs, 3 of clubs. The board is king of clubs, 10 of clubs, 7 of spades. Is that right? Yes. The range we need for our opponent is this over here. We can copy it out of the ebook or we can just get it out of the answer key. So page 132, their range, copy that. And when you're in Flopzilla Pro, just click the little bar down here. It'll give you a blinking cursor, paste, hit enter, and there's the exact range we're looking at right here. And now let's start going to work. So we need our equity, but we don't need our equity against their entire range. Right now, this 44% equity we see over here is against the entire range they have right this moment. But what we actually are interested in is what is our equity against their calling range. When we shove, they call, what's our equity at that point? So we have to start by plugging in the filters for the hand types that we selected in the prompt. Right, so we think they're going to call you all in with top pair better, so let's make sure that's all selected. So top pair better, perfect. Also, they're going to call with 10x, so they're going to call with middle pair. They're going to continue with flush draws and open and straight draws. So flush draws are selected, open and straight draws are selected. Perfect. And when we click this over to green, this is only going to give us the output for the range that we just filtered for right here. So now we can see our range, our ace 3's range. Our ace 3's equity against their calling range is 42%. So that's what we're going to throw in right here. Perfect. And now we can start getting to work, filling out the stuff down below and get this entire formula filled out and show you how to do this. And to do this easily, we're going to use a tool that I created. It's a complex EV calculator. It's totally free, or you can throw a few chips in and get a bunch of bonuses too. You can either go to splitsuit.com/sheets for that, or you can just look down in the description box and there'll be a link right there, but very, very powerful to use. And I created a whole bunch of extra ones for this Postflop Workbook. So hopefully you end up getting a bunch of usage out of it. So let's start talking about how to use this equation and throw everything in, make sure we know exactly what's supposed to go where and where we can get all of the different variables that go into this equation. All right, so if you're new to EV equations in general, this probably looks a little bit scary. Even if you've been around these for a while, this could look a little bit scary. So let's explain a couple different basic things here. When we shove in this situation, there are 3 different possible outcomes, right? We could shove, our opponent folds, and we win the pot right this moment. We could shove, our opponent calls, and we win the pot. We could shove, our opponent calls, and we end up losing the pot. So there are 3 possible outcomes. So when you're looking at this kind of scary equation down here with a bunch of different things in it, a couple of these numbers are going to be the exact same. So first and foremost, the top branch is how often we shove and our opponent folds right this moment. And when they fold, we're picking up this 465 uncontested. So we can just throw that right in right this moment, 465, and how often is that happening? Well, over here, when we were drawing everything up, everything that was filtered in blue is all the stuff we think they're going to call our shove with, which means they're probably going to fold the rest of it, right? They only have two options. They can either call our shove or they can fold against our shove. So we thought they were going to continue 52% of the time, which means they're going to fold the other 48% of the time, and that's good news for us. We're picking up that uncontested pot a lot of the time. So 48% goes right there, which means when they're continuing, again, right, we could shove, they fold, great, we win the pot uncontested, or we could shove, they continue. Okay, how often does that happen? That's going to be that 52% of the time, and that is going to go in both of these different places, right? Because we're looking at they continue, and then how much are we winning and how often is that happening, and then when they continue, how often are we losing and how often is that happening? How much are we losing and how often is that happening? So there are essentially at this point just a couple different things to factor in. One is our equity, which we know we're going to win this 42% of the time. Excellent. That's our equity right here. That goes into the winning strand when they continue. And that means we're going to lose the other part of that, so 58% of the time. Excellent. When we do win the pot, right, when we shove, they call, how much are we winning in those situations where we do end up winning that pot? We're winning their $800 call plus the original $465, and that gets us up to what, $1265? Excellent. And when we shove and our opponent continues and we lose, how much are we losing? We're losing our $800 shove. And at first this might seem a little bit confusing. Why aren't we losing the 800 plus the pot? Or why aren't we losing our 800 plus our 4-bet from preflop? You can't look at it like that. The money that you put into the pot on earlier streets belongs to the pot at that point. So at this point, we could shove our 800, and that's our total risk in this situation. And when we win, again, we're not really, don't think about it like we're winning this. We're winning their $800 call plus the pot right this moment. Now, if we go back to the EV equation, we can throw all of these same numbers in, right? So we said the F percentage, how often they're folding against our shove right this moment, is 48%. The C automatically calculates to 52 for us, because if you know one, you know the other, because 100% minus 1 gets you the other number. And the current pot right this moment is 465. When we shove and lose, we lose $800. When we win, we're winning 1265, right? 800 plus 465. And how often are we winning? We're winning 42% of the time because that is our equity. And total, that gets us to 258 in the positive, which is pretty great. Because what's your alternative in this situation? To check and possibly fold? Right? You could try to branch this out and look at the EV of the other lines included, and you definitely should, right? What is the EV of checking and facing a bet? What is the EV of check shoving? What is the EV of check folding? What is the EV of check, and then you do something on the turn? You could try to factor all those branches as well, but when I find a really nice slam dunk situation where I get a lot of EV for a kind of simple play like this, it's something that I'm very interested in. Now, if the EV here was like plus $14, that's not quite as good, and I'm definitely going to be more interested in exploring other options. And obviously, if the EV was negative, I definitely don't want to be shoving right this moment. But this is the way that you can start to solve these kind of things off table, and again, start to, in real time, have a better hunch of, okay, what do I think my equity would be in this situation? How often do I think they're going to be folding? Are they folding a lot? Because the more they're folding right this moment, right, if they say called with a wider range of hands against our 4-bet and would fold a lot when we shove right this moment, I mean, that's incredibly good for us because we're just picking up this 465 uncontested a lot of the time. Or if the SPR were larger, right, all of a sudden we have to risk a lot more. Is that really going to be great for us? By doing this kind of work off table, you're going to have a better estimate on that in real time, be far less confused, and be able to find a far better answer much quicker. And just for the record, if you're interested, the answer key, just to double check that, again, page 132, the EV of shoving is 258. And just for the record, if you're in the answer key and you pop over to the right, you get the entire formula over there. So if you're like, where the heck are these numbers coming from? Or you're like, I'm not quite sure, start over there. It'll show you exactly where you may have gone wrong. And in this situation, we did everything correct, which is excellent. And that is how you do this kind of exploration. Hopefully this helps, and hopefully this sets you up for doing your own kind of exploration better in the future. You could always grab the Postflop Workbook, and there are more exercises just like this, as well as situations where it's a smaller SPR pot and you're facing a shove and you have to decide if you can call, which is far simpler when it comes to the EV equation, but still something that is definitely worth exploring, especially if you play tournaments or you're in smaller SPR pots a lot or a decent chunk of the time, or even just a couple times per session. This kind of stuff can help a tremendous amount. You can learn more about the workbook at splitsuit.com/postflop. There are over 1,700 questions, a complete answer key. Paperback is available on Amazon, and there's also an included course that shows you how to do every single chapter in this workbook, which is really helpful if you're in here and you're like, I'm not sure what to do. Start with that course first and you'll get going exactly where you need to be. So same as always, if you need anything at all, have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and want to see more like it. Otherwise, I'll see you back shortly with a brand new video. And in the meantime, good luck out there and happy grinding.